For your information, there's a lot more to ogres than people think. Layers!
So, hopefully this is just a real quick lesson in personality to help us understand Lex and Lionel and the other characters in the show, as well as people in real life, because this absolutely applies in real life as well. Everybody has different strengths and weaknesses in how we think and interact with the world. Myers-Briggs is what explained this to me, but I'm going to try and keep it in like layman's terms to help to keep it simple. There's like various dichotomies that emerge in how we think and interact with the world. For example, everyone's familiar with introvert versus extrovert. What you might not know is that everybody has their introverted side and their extroverted side. Some people are stronger in their extroverted side, some people are stronger in their introverted side, but both of them exist in every person. But I'm going to be talking real quick about what I think is a more significant dichotomy, and that has to do with thinking versus feeling, is how Myers-Briggs describes it. Thinkers versus feelers. And it has to do with people who are inclined to approach the world in a rational, objective way versus people who are inclined to approach the world and determine their values in a more emotional and subjective way. Again, everybody has both. So when you are at your strongest and best in your rational functions, you're at your weakest and your least competent in your emotional functions, and vice versa. We spend most of our time in our strongest functions, and particularly when we are in potentially threatening situations. So for example, if you're out meeting new people, you're under stress, you're interviewing for a job, the stronger side is what protects you. That's where you're competent. That's where you're comfortable. That's where you know what you're doing. You're going to strongly prefer being in your strong functions. Your weaker side can come out unintentionally if you are severely compromised in some way and your stronger side is breaking down. So if you're under a lot of stress, if you're sick, whatever it is that's going on, if you just got too much going on, your stronger side is going to break down and your weaker side is going to come out. And your weaker side can be shown consciously. You can be vulnerable consciously when you feel safe. When you are either with trustworthy people, or I should say more to the point, when you believe to yourself to be with trustworthy people, because that may or may not be true. Or if you believe that even if you're not, you'll be able to protect yourself if you're attacked. So if you're a psychologically healthy person, you might feel comfortable being vulnerable because you think you'll be able to protect yourself either way. I don't think most people feel that way though. Men, as a general rule, like Lex and Lionel, tend to be at their best and most competent and feel their safest in their cold, rational functions. The impersonal, the objective reason. And they tend, not across the board, but they tend to be at their weakest and feel most vulnerable in their emotional functions. Not all men are like this, but most men are. There are also some women like this, but it's uncommon.
No, it's not illegal. It's just rare.
Women tend to be the opposite. Feel very comfortable and safe in their emotional, soft, subjective functions, and feel totally out of their element and vulnerable in their cold, rational functions. So in the area of facts and logic, they're going to feel like it's hard to navigate. Whereas for men, the tendency is to feel like it's hard to navigate when there aren't facts and logic, when it's about how we feel about things as opposed to what is objectively true. And even just literally paying attention to the emotions themselves tends to be easier for feelers, which is usually women, and tends to be harder for thinkers, which is usually men. Again, not across the board. There are female thinkers, there are male feelers, it's just uncommon. There is a tendency that I have observed and experienced myself to be fearful of being perceived as your weaker functions. Both of them are your stronger side and your weaker side, your extroverted side and your introverted side, your thinking side and your feeling side. That's all you. But we are most comfortable and competent in our stronger side, so that's how we want to be perceived. And there can be a fear that drives people sometimes, a fear of being perceived as though the weaker side is what you are, at the expense of your stronger side, which leads people to put up their shields and hide it even unnecessarily. So a woman, for example, might find herself very afraid that someone will discover how cold her heart can sometimes be, and she might be afraid of the cruelty she believes she could fall into. She feels herself capable of falling into, even if she doesn't. Men, on the other hand, may be afraid of being perceived as emotional and are afraid of how tender and vulnerable their hearts can be and how deeply they can be hurt. Rule of thumb that I have found to be true. If they are soft and tender on the outside, they are surprisingly cold on the inside, and vice versa. People who are cold and hard on the outside are surprisingly tender-hearted on the inside. So everybody puts up their shields, which, by the way, is not an unhealthy response in itself. And especially if you are a survivor of any amount of abuse, even small amounts of abuse, we learn as we grow up. You know, kids are nice and innocent, and if they have happy childhoods, this lasts a long time. But eventually, we all start getting hurt by the cruelty of the world, and we start putting up our shields and learning, okay, the weak functions are not for everyday life. That's for when we feel safe, and that's not all the time. Most of the time, we stay in our strong functions, and that's a normal response. So there's this thing I'm going to add here for the rational types. Maybe there's something analogous for the feeler types. I just haven't thought it through. But I see this particularly in Lionel. And it is a real thing I have seen in real life. It will sound absolutely ridiculous, but it's not. It is real, I assure you. So I already discussed these two layers you have. You've got your weaker layer, and then you protect it with your stronger layer. And those are both real. They're both part of you. But there's this thing that some rational people do, where the fear of being perceived as the weaker side, you know, your first shield is your stronger side. But if they are fearful enough that somebody's going to see right through that and realize that the weaker side is there, they add a third layer, which is a layer of the fake weakness. So in Lionel's case, it's the, what are you talking about? Of course I'm comfortable with my emotions. I'm very affectionate with my son. And it's completely fake, and he knows it's fake. That's the point. People will see the fake emotional side and go, oh, please, we see right through that. You're actually cold and heartless. And he'll be like, okay, that's good, because that's where I'm safe, and that's what I want you to see. When in fact, there's another layer underneath that one of actual emotional weakness and vulnerability. Oh, the lengths we go to stay safe.
I'll put that flea in a box, and then I'll put that box inside of another box, and then I'll nail that box to myself. And when it arrives, I'll smash it with a hammer.